She did not gasp, she did not flinch, she did not so much as blink when Lord Ashford Blackwell, the 7th Duke of Ravensmoor, pressed his lips to the ear of Lady Cecily Hartwell and whispered the 3 most ruinous words in all of England. "The child is mine." And yet she heard every syllable. She always did. Welcome, dearest listeners, to the Duke's Lost Letters, the channel where every secret has a heartbeat and every silence hides a storm. If this is your first time joining us, you have arrived at precisely the right moment. And if you have been with us since the very beginning, then you already know we do not tell ordinary stories here. We tell the ones that were never meant to be told. Before we go any further into this delicious scandal, I must ask, if you have not yet done so, please take a moment to like this story and subscribe to our channel. Every single subscription is not merely a number, it is a candle lit in the darkness of this library, a hand extended across time, telling us that you wish to hear more. It costs you nothing, and yet it means everything to the continuation of these tales. Subscribe now and ring that bell so that not a single whispered secret reaches you too late. Now, let us return to the woman who heard everything and said nothing. Her name was Miss Elara Voss, the second daughter of a minor baron whose fortunes had crumbled as surely as the plasterwork on his ancestral seat in Shropshire. Elara had been rendered mute, so the world believed, by a fever that stole her speech at the age of 7. She communicated through careful, elegant handwriting, through the tilt of her chin, and through the most extraordinarily expressive pair of grey eyes that Ravensmoor had ever beheld across a crowded assembly room. He had not expected to be moved by her. He had not expected to be moved by anything, truly, in those hollow months following the death of his father and the subsequent unravelling of a ducal estate burdened by debt and whispered impropriety. He had come to the Voss estate for business, a land negotiation with her father, nothing more. And yet, when Elara had slipped into the drawing-room bearing a tray of tea, her movements as quiet and precise as a passage of music played pianissimo, something within Ashford Blackwell had stilled. He had watched her, and she had not watched him back, or so he believed. In truth, Elara had catalogued every detail of him. The deep furrow between his dark brows that suggested a man perpetually wrestling with something he could not name, the way his jaw tightened when her father laughed too loudly at his jest, the slight tremor in his left hand as he lifted his teacup, not from weakness, she had decided, but from the particular exhaustion of a man carrying the whole of the world upon one shoulder, with no one standing beside him to share the burden. Their betrothal was arranged before the fortnight was out. Society, of course, was aghast. A duke, young, darkly handsome, heir to one of the most storied titles in the realm, wedding a baron's mute daughter? The whispers in the drawing-rooms of Mayfair were uncharitable in the extreme. She was called simple, she was called a charity case, she was called a convenient ornament, chosen for her silence and her inability to speak the things she might otherwise observe. How perfectly, catastrophically wrong they all were. Elara Blackwell, Duchess of Ravensmoor, arrived at Blackwell Manor on a grey October morning, when the moors were cloaked in a low pewter fog, and the elms along the drive stood stripped of their leaves, like sentinels stripped of their dignity. The housekeeper, Mrs. Pringle, curtsied with the particular stiffness of a woman who had not expected to be receiving a new mistress quite so soon. The footmen were attentive but distant. The entire household, Elara perceived with quiet, devastating clarity, was holding its breath. Ashford led her through rooms of dark walnut paneling and paintings of ancestors who all appeared to share his talent for looking deeply unsatisfied. He was courteous, he was not unkind, but he was absent, not physically, but in the manner that truly lonely people are absent even when standing directly before you, as though a heavy pane of glass had been installed between his interior life and the rest of the world. He had given her a suite of rooms overlooking the rose garden. He had given her a desk of exquisite rosewood. He had given her, on the morning after their wedding, a small leather-bound journal with her initials embossed in gold upon the cover, accompanied by a note in his own hand that read simply, "So that you may always speak, even when the world does not know to listen." She had pressed her fingers against the words for a long moment, alone in the grey morning light, and had felt something soft and dangerous begin to loosen in her chest. She had not permitted herself to call it hope, not yet. Dear listeners, if you are still with us on this journey, and I do hope with all my heart that you are, please pause for just one moment and subscribe to The Duke's Lost Letters if you have not yet done so. We release new stories every week, and I promise you, you will not wish to miss what is coming. Subscribe, like, and stay close. The most scandalous chapter is nearly upon us. The secret she had heard on the night of Lord Ashford's dinner party, the one whispered by her husband to Lady Cecily Hartwell in the amber shadows of the corridor outside the music room, was not the first. There had been others. A hushed exchange between Ashford and his solicitor, Mr. Fenn, about a document that had been forged, a codicil to the late Duke's will that redistributed a significant parcel of Ravensmoor's Scottish estate to a third party whose name was spoken too softly for even Elara's keen hearing to capture entirely. There had been a letter delivered in the small hours of a Tuesday morning that Ashford had burned in the library grate before the last coal had cooled. She had smelled the ink and the wax seal from the corridor. She had seen the shadow of his profile through the gap in the door, jaw tight, eyes closed, the weight of whatever that letter contained settling across his shoulders like a stone mantle. And now, this. The child is mine. Lady Cecily Hartwell was 3 months with child and not yet wed. Her fiancé, the Earl of Pembridge, believed himself to be the father. If the truth were to emerge, and in the fever-bright, gossip-hungry world of London society, truth had a cruel habit of doing precisely that, the scandal would be catastrophic. It would attach itself to the Ravensmoor name like tar. It would consume everything. And Ashford knew it. What Elara had not anticipated, what split something open within her as she stood in the darkness of that corridor, the cold draught lifting the hem of her silk gown, her breath entirely still, was the grief upon his face. It was not the look of a man conducting an affair. It was the look of a man being asked to pay a debt he had not agreed to incur. A man trapped. She returned to her rooms. She sat at her rosewood desk. She did not write. She thought of his note, "So that you may always speak, even when the world does not know to listen." And she made her decision. The following morning, when Ashford came to the breakfast room to find it empty, save for a single sealed letter resting upon his plate, he hesitated before opening it. His fingers pressed the paper as though it were burling. Inside, in Elara's precise, unhurried hand, he read, "I know what you carry. I have always known. I cannot speak it aloud, but I am asking you to let me stand beside you, all the same. You gave me a voice when you believed I had none. I am asking you now to trust it." For a long moment, the Duke of Ravensmoor stood motionless in the thin morning light, the letter in his hand, the fire crackling low in the grate. Then he did something that no one in that great cold manor had witnessed in many years. He wept. not from despair, from the particular unraveling relief of a man who has been found, truly found by another human soul in exactly the place he believed himself most irretrievably lost. He found her in the rose garden, her grey eyes steady upon him as he approached through the frost-brittle grass, and without a single word spoken between them, he took her hand in both of his and held it as though it were the most precious document he had ever been entrusted to keep. She had always been able to hear everything, but it was only now, in the silence between them, warm and unhurried and full of the beginning of something true, that he finally began to listen. And that, beloved listeners, is where the Duke of Ravensmoor's story truly begins. If this tale has moved you, stirred you, or made you lean a little closer in the candlelight, please subscribe to the Duke's Lost Letters and leave this story a like. Share it with someone who loves a secret well told. We will be back very soon with another letter, another scandal, and another love that refuses to remain hidden. Until then, listen closely. The walls, as always, have ears.